terminates James Carter as CEO, effective immediately. Olivia Carter's commanding voice echoes through the boardroom, shattering her husband's empire and his mistress's smug dreams. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Share your city in the comments. Olivia, a radiant black queen, returns from a business trip to find her home claimed by Tara, her husband's lover. But will she crumble or rise with a silent, devastating revenge? What's your guess? Does Olivia reclaim her throne, or does betrayal win? Dive into this tale of empowerment and drama to find out. You won't predict the twist. Love epic comebacks? Hit subscribe and tap the bell for our latest stories. Share with friends and comment on your thoughts below. Let's unravel Olivia's triumph. How fierce will her justice be? The John F. Kennedy International Airport thrummed with a restless heartbeat, a symphony of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and muffled announcements. Amid the chaos, Olivia Carter moved like a quiet storm. Her long, ebony hair flowed over her shoulders, catching flecks of fluorescent light, each strand a testament to her unyielding grace. Her tailored charcoal blazer clung to her frame, sharp yet soft, a reflection of the woman who wore it, resilient but weary. 3 weeks in Nairobi, negotiating high-stakes contracts for Carter Enterprises, had left her bones heavy, her mind a tangle of numbers and handshakes. Yet as she stepped into the arrival lounge, a spark flickered in her deep brown eyes. Home. The word felt like a warm blanket, promising the scent of jasmine in her Manhattan penthouse garden, the comfort of her bed, and most of all, the arms of her husband, James. She pictured him waiting at the gate, his blue eyes crinkling with that boyish grin she'd fallen for 6 years ago. His sandy blonde hair would be slightly tousled, his arms open wide, ready to pull her into the safety of his embrace. Her lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that held both exhaustion and hope. Her carry-on glided smoothly behind her, its wheels whispering against the polished floor, her heels clicking in a steady rhythm, a metronome to her anticipation. She scanned the crowd, her gaze darting past strangers' faces, searching for the one that anchored her world. A man in a gray suit rushed by, a child clutched a balloon, a couple embraced tearfully. But no James. Her smile faltered, a crack in the porcelain of her composure. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, she murmured to herself, adjusting the strap of her leather satchel. Manhattan's arteries were notorious for clogging at the worst moments. She took a deep breath, the air tasting of coffee and jet fuel, and pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over James's name, the contact photo, a candid shot of him laughing at a beach in the Hamptons, stirring a pang in her chest. She dialed. The line rang once, twice, then slipped into the cold silence of voicemail. Her brow furrowed. She tried again, her heart ticking faster. No answer. The spark in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a shadow of unease. "Don't panic, Olivia," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the airport's hum. "You've only just landed." A passing airport worker, his badge glinting under the lights, offered her a small, sympathetic smile. Olivia nodded politely, but the gesture felt hollow. A chill crept into her chest, not from the air-conditioned lounge, but from a deeper, unnamed fear. She adjusted her blazer, squared her shoulders, and moved toward the exit, her heels now striking the floor with a touch more force, as if to drown out the questions bubbling in her mind. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars, each one a memory of the life she'd built with James. The late-night talks on their balcony, the way he'd hum off-key while cooking breakfast, the vows they'd whispered under a canopy of roses. She clung to those images, refusing to let the silence unravel them. She slid into a yellow cab, the leather seat cool against her skin. "West 57th Street, she told the driver, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. As the cab pulled away, she leaned back, her fingers tracing the edge of her phone. She rehearsed the gentle scolding she'd give James for not picking her up. "You had one job," she'd tease, imagining his sheepish grin, his hand reaching for hers. But the phone remained silent, its blank screen a mirror to the growing void in her heart. The city blurred past, taxis honking, neon signs flashing, pedestrians weaving through the chaos. but Olivia's world felt eerily still, as if time itself were holding its breath. The cab slowed before her penthouse, a sleek tower of glass and steel that rose into the Manhattan skyline like a beacon of her success. Its floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city's pulse, and Olivia's heart swelled with the promise of home. She stepped out, the night air kissing her skin, and paid the driver with a practiced smile. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached the private entrance, her carry-on trailing faithfully behind. The doorman, a familiar face named Carl, tipped his hat. "Welcome back, Ms. Carter," he said, his tone warm but tinged with something she couldn't place. Hesitation, perhaps? She nodded, brushing it off, and stepped into the elevator. The ride to the 42nd floor was silent, save for the soft hum of the machinery. Olivia's reflection stared back from the mirrored walls, poised, elegant, but with eyes that betrayed a flicker of doubt. She shook it off, focusing on the thought of sinking into her bed, of James's laughter filling the air. The elevator doors parted, revealing the private foyer to her penthouse. She reached into her satchel, her fingers brushing against her keys. They trembled slightly, whether from fatigue or anticipation, she couldn't tell. She fit the key into the lock, her heart thudding with the promise of reunion. She turned the key. Nothing. The lock resisted, unyielding. Her breath caught, a sharp intake that echoed in the quiet foyer. She frowned, trying again, twisting harder, jiggling the knob. Still nothing. A cold weight dropped into her stomach, heavy and unforgiving. "Rusted," she whispered, though the key gleamed, pristine as ever. Her pulse quickened, a drumbeat of unease. She pressed the doorbell, its chime cutting through the silence like a blade. She waited, expecting James's voice, his laugh, an explanation, anything. Footsteps approached, light and unfamiliar. The door swung open and Olivia's world tilted. A woman stood there, not James. Blonde hair framed a pale face, her green eyes glinting with a smug confidence. She wore a silk robe, loosely tied, and held a wine glass with manicured fingers. "Oh, you must be Olivia," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, as if Olivia were a guest in her own home. Olivia's lips parted, but no sound came. The air thickened, charged with a betrayal she hadn't yet named. Beyond the woman, the penthouse gleamed with unfamiliar touches. New art on the walls, a chandelier that wasn't hers, cushions she'd never chosen. The scent of jasmine was gone, replaced by something sharp, expensive, alien. Olivia's hand tightened around her key, her knuckles paling. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper, calm but laced with steel. "Excuse me, wrong address." She turned, her heels striking the floor with deliberate precision, each step a refusal to crumble. The woman's soft chuckle followed her, a sound that cut deeper than any blade. As the elevator doors closed, Olivia's reflection stared back. Not the woman who'd left 3 weeks ago, but one standing on the edge of a truth she wasn't ready to face. Yet in the depths of her eyes a fire flickered, small but unyielding, whispering a promise. This was not the end. The elevator descended from the penthouse foyer, its mirrored walls reflecting Olivia Carter's silhouette like a portrait of restrained fury. Her long, ebony hair framed her face, a stark contrast to the pale glow of her tailored charcoal blazer, now feeling more like armor than attire. Her brown eyes, usually warm, were sharp with a quiet storm, fixed on the numbers ticking downward. The stranger's chuckle, sharp, mocking, echoed in her mind, each note a splinter in her composure. Olivia's hand still clutched her key, its refusal to turn in the lock, a betrayal as tangible as the woman who'd answered her door. She stepped out into the lobby, her heels striking the marble with a cadence that masked the tremor in her chest. Carl, the doorman, glanced up, his eyes flickering with unease. "Everything all right, Miss Carter?" he asked, voice low. Olivia forced a nod, her lips a tight line, and pushed through the glass doors into the Manhattan night. The city pulsed around her. Honking taxis, neon signs, the chatter of late-night pedestrians. But Olivia moved through it like a ghost, her carry-on trailing behind, a loyal shadow. Her mind replayed the scene, the blonde woman in a silk robe, wine glass in hand, her green eyes glinting with smug triumph. "Oh, you must be Olivia," she'd said, as if Olivia were an uninvited guest in her own home. The words burned, but it was the sight beyond her that seared deepest. Her penthouse transformed. The familiar cream walls were now a bold taupe, adorned with abstract art she'd never chosen. A crystal chandelier gleamed where her simple pendant light once hung. The cushions on her leather sofa, once a soft gray, were now vibrant teal, alien, and garish. The scent of jasmine, her garden signature, was gone, replaced by a cloying perfume that clung to the air like an intruder's claim. Olivia hailed a cab, sliding into the back seat with mechanical precision. "The Langham Fifth Avenue," she told the driver, her voice steady, betraying none of the chaos roiling within. As the cab wove through traffic, she stared out at the city's glittering skyline, her reflection faint in the window. Who was that woman? The question gnawed, but a deeper one cut sharper. Where was James, her husband, the man who'd vowed to cherish her, whose absence at the airport had been a crack in her world, now felt like a chasm? She opened her phone, the screen's glow harsh against the dim interior. No missed calls, no texts, just the photo of James laughing on a Hamptons beach, now a mocking relic. Her thumb hovered over his name, but she didn't dial. What could he say that her key's failure hadn't already screamed? The Langham's lobby was a sanctuary of muted elegance. Marble floors, soft lighting, the faint hum of classical music. Olivia checked in, her movements deliberate, her smile to the receptionist practiced but hollow. "Welcome, Ms. Carter," the young woman said, handing over a key card. Olivia nodded, her satchel heavy on her shoulder, and rode the elevator to her suite. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing out the world. She stood motionless, still in her blazer, her carry-on abandoned by the door. The room was pristine, beige walls, a plush bed, a view of the city's restless heart. But it felt like a cage, trapping her with a truth she wasn't ready to name. She crossed to the window, the city sprawling below like a map of her unraveling life. Her fingers grazed the glass, cool and unyielding. The woman's voice replayed, "James didn't mention you'd be back." The casual cruelty of it, the implication that Olivia was an afterthought, twisted like a knife. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. No tears came, no sobs. Instead, a silence settled, heavy and resonant, as if her soul were holding its breath. She opened her leather-bound journal, its pages once filled with meeting notes, now a canvas for her pain. Her pen hovered, then pressed to the paper. "My key doesn't fit. My home isn't mine. A stranger stands in my place, and James is silent." The words bled onto the page, each one a step toward clarity. Olivia rose, moving to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, the shock grounding her. Her reflection stared back, eyes fierce, skin glowing under the soft light, but older, heavier, as if the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago had aged a lifetime. "You are not this," she whispered, her voice a low growl, daring the mirror to argue. She straightened, her hair falling like a curtain of resolve. The woman at the door, Tara, she'd later learn, had stood with a confidence that didn't belong to her, claiming Olivia's space, her life. But Olivia was no intruder. This was her penthouse, her legacy, built with her sweat and her father's dreams. Tara's smirk, her wine glass, her robe, they were props in a performance Olivia hadn't auditioned for. She returned to the bed, her journal open beside her. The city's lights flickered through the blinds, casting slivers of gold across the room. She wrote again, "They changed my walls, my air, but they cannot change my foundation." Her pen paused, her breath steadying. The betrayal was not just James's absence, not just Tara's presence. It was the calculated theft of her existence. The locks changed, the decor replaced, her home repainted as if she'd never been. Yet in the silence of the hotel room, Olivia felt a spark ignite, small but fierce. She closed the journal, her fingers tracing its leather cover. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew this: she would not vanish. Olivia stood, crossing to the window once more. The city below moved on, oblivious to the storm in her chest. She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection merging with the skyline. Tara's chuckle, James's silence, The key that wouldn't turn. They were wounds, but not fatal. Olivia Carter was a woman forged in fire, her father's daughter, her own architect. She whispered to the night, her voice soft but unyielding, "You took my home, but you won't take me." The words hung in the air, a vow etched in the quiet. The city kept its secrets, but Olivia was done being one of them. She turned from the window, her shadow long and unbroken, ready to face whatever truth awaited her. The Langham suite was a cocoon of muted luxury, its beige walls and soft lighting a stark contrast to the storm churning within Olivia Carter. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her silhouette sharp against the Manhattan skyline. Still clad in the charcoal blazer that had carried her through Nairobi's boardrooms, and now this betrayal. Her long, ebony hair spilled over her shoulders, a cascade of defiance framing her face. The city glittered below, its pulse indifferent to the wound Tara's smug smile had carved into her heart. Olivia's fingers grazed the cool glass, grounding her as the memory of the penthouse door, her door swung open by a stranger, replayed like a cruel reel. Tara's voice, dripping with false innocence, echoed, "James didn't mention you'd be back." The words were a blade, but it was the transformed penthouse, her sanctuary violated, repainted, reclaimed, that cut deepest. Olivia turned from the window, her heels silent on the plush carpet. Her carry-on sat untouched by the door, a relic of the life she'd expected to resume. She crossed to the bed, sinking onto its edge, her hands folded tightly in her lap. No tears fell, no sobs broke the silence. Instead, a heavy stillness settled, as if her soul were gathering itself for battle. Her brown eyes, usually radiant, were now a storm of resolve, glinting with a fire that refused to be extinguished. She reached for her leather-bound journal, its worn cover a familiar anchor. Once a repository for corporate strategies, it was now her confessional, her war map. Her pen pressed to the page, the ink flowing like blood. "They locked me out. They painted my walls. But I am not erased." The words were a vow, each stroke a reclaiming of her voice. She rose, moving to the bathroom with deliberate steps. The mirror above the sink reflected a woman transformed. Not broken, but sharpened. She splashed cold water on her face, the shock a jolt to her senses. Her reflection stared back, her skin glowing under the soft light, but her eyes carried a weight that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. "You are Olivia Carter," she whispered, her voice low, fierce, daring the mirror to contradict her. The woman who'd closed multi-million-dollar deals, who'd built Carter Enterprises alongside her father, would not crumble under a stranger's smirk or a husband's silence. She straightened, her hair falling like a curtain of strength, and returned to the bed, the journal open beside her. The city's lights flickered through the blinds, casting golden slivers across the room. Olivia wrote again, "My home is a stranger's stage, but I am no guest. I built that life, and I will take it back." Her pen paused, her breath steadying. The betrayal was more than Tara's presence or James's absence. It was the calculated theft of her existence. The changed locks, the taupe walls, the teal cushions, they weren't just decor. They were an attempt to rewrite her story, to paint over her legacy with the bold strokes of another woman's ambition. But Olivia was no footnote. She was the author, and this chapter was hers to shape. She closed the journal, her fingers tracing its leather spine. The silence in the room was no longer oppressive, it was powerful, a canvas for her resolve. She stood crossing to the desk where her phone lay, its screen dark. No calls, no texts, no word from James. The absence was a wound, but also a clarity. His silence wasn't neglect, it was complicity. She opened their last text thread, her message from Nairobi glowing. "Flight's on time. Can't wait to see you." No reply. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, the urge to demand answers surging, then fading. What could he say that the locked door hadn't already confessed? She locked the phone, setting it face down, a small act of defiance against the man who'd forgotten her. Olivia paced the room, her mind a whirl of questions and calculations. Who was Tara? A fleeting affair, or something deeper, more deliberate? The woman's confidence, her ease in Olivia's home, suggested permanence, a role she'd been invited to play. And James, where was he? Not at the airport, not at home, Not even in the digital ether of a missed call. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It felt orchestrated, a quiet coup against the life they'd built. Olivia stopped pacing, her gaze falling on the journal. She didn't have answers, but she had herself, and that was enough for now. She sat at the desk, opening her laptop with a click that echoed in the quiet. Her inbox was a flood of work emails, contracts, meeting requests, updates from Nairobi, but she ignored them, opening a blank document instead. Her fingers hovered over the keys, then began to type. What I know. The locks are changed. Tara is in my home. James is silent. What I will do. Find the truth. Reclaim what's mine. The list was short, but it was a foundation, a map for the woman she was becoming. She saved the file, naming it Resilience, and closed the laptop, the act a quiet declaration of intent. The city outside hummed, its rhythm unbroken by her pain. Olivia stood, crossing to the window once more. The skyline stretched before her, a tapestry of ambition and betrayal. She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection merging with the city's glow. Tara's chuckle, the alien decor, James's absence, they were wounds, but they were also fuel. Olivia Carter was no stranger to battles. She'd faced boardrooms of skeptics, outmaneuvered corporate sharks, and carried her father's legacy through storms of doubt. This was no different. It was just personal. She whispered to the night, her voice soft but unyielding. You took my key, but you won't take my fire. The words hung in the air, a promise etched in the silence. The city kept its secrets, but Olivia was done hiding hers. She turned from the window, her shadow long and unbroken, her heart a furnace of quiet resilience. The fight was coming, and she would meet it not with screams, but with the steady, unstoppable force of a woman who knew her worth. The morning sun pierced through the blinds of Olivia Carter's hotel suite at the Langham, casting sharp slivers of light across the room. She sat at the sleek mahogany desk, her long, ebony hair pulled into a low bun, her tailored charcoal blazer replaced by a crisp white blouse that seemed to radiate resolve. Her brown eyes, sharp with purpose, scanned the open laptop before her, its screen glowing with a spreadsheet of Carter Enterprises financials. The betrayal of the previous night, Tara's smug smile, the transformed penthouse, James's deafening silence, had hardened into a quiet fury, fueling her every move. Olivia wasn't a woman who crumbled. She was a strategist, and today she would begin to unravel the truth. Her leather-bound journal lay open beside her, its latest entry a battle cry. They stole my home. I'll take back my empire. She sipped black coffee, the bitter warmth grounding her, and glanced at her phone. No messages from James, no apologies, just the blank screen that mirrored his absence. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but her focus didn't waver. She opened an email to her assistant, Maya, typed with swift precision, Meet me at the Bean and Leaf, 9 a.m. Bring everything you've got. Olivia hit send, closed the laptop, and stood, her reflection in the nearby mirror unyielding, a warrior in white, her hair a crown, her eyes a storm. She grabbed her satchel, slipped into low heels, and left the suite, her steps deliberate, each one a declaration that she was no victim. The Bean and Leaf, a cozy cafe tucked into a quiet corner of Midtown, hummed with the clink of porcelain and the murmur of early risers. Olivia sat at a corner table, her posture regal, her coffee untouched. Maya arrived, her short curls bouncing, her eyes wide with concern. She slid into the seat across from Olivia, placing a thick manila folder on the table. You were right to suspect, Maya said softly, her voice barely above the cafe's ambient noise. It's worse than we thought. Olivia's jaw tightened, but her expression remained calm, a mask of control. She opened the folder, her fingers steady as they sifted through bank statements, emails, and receipts, each a piece of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. The documents told a damning story. Tara had siphoned funds from Carter Enterprises' logistics division, James's domain, to finance the penthouse's overhaul, new art, a chandelier, custom furniture, all billed as consulting expenses. One receipt showed a $12,000 charge for a creative retreat at a Hampton spa, booked under Tara's name, approved by James. Another email from James to a board member introduced Tara as creative director, a title Olivia had never authorized. "He's letting her touch my legacy," Olivia murmured, her voice low, laced with steel. Maya leaned in, her eyes fierce. "There's more. He's rerouting contracts through her shell company. Small ones, but they add up. Hundreds of thousands, Olivia." Olivia's fingers paused on a bank transfer, her knuckles paling. The numbers weren't just money. They were her father's dreams, her years of late nights, her empire. James hadn't just betrayed her marriage. He was dismantling her life's work, repackaging it with Tara's name. She closed the folder, her breath slow, controlled. "He thinks I'm blind," she said, her eyes meeting Maya's. "He thinks I'll stay quiet." Maya's lips curved into a grim smile. "He doesn't know you." Olivia's gaze hardened, a spark igniting. "No, he doesn't, but he will." She opened her journal, jotting notes with a pen that moved like a scalpel. "Tara uses company funds. James approves. Contracts rerouted. My business, my name, their theft." Each word was a brick in the wall she was building, a fortress of evidence. She looked up at Maya. "Dig deeper. Cross-reference every transaction with board approvals. If James signed off, I want his signature. If Tara touched it, I want her fingerprints." Maya nodded, her expression fierce. "I'm on it. But Olivia, what's the plan?" Olivia's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "The plan is true. They built a lie. I'll tear it down with facts." The cafe's chatter faded as Olivia's mind raced. She pictured Tara in her penthouse, lounging on the sofa Olivia had chosen, sipping wine from glasses Olivia had bought. The image wasn't just painful, it was fuel. James's silence wasn't neglect. It was strategy, a belief that Olivia would fade into the background, too wounded to fight. But Olivia Carter didn't fade. She sharpened. She leaned back, her coffee now cold, and opened her laptop again, pulling up Carter Enterprises' shareholder records. Her father's will had left her 60% control, a fact James either didn't know or had underestimated. That power, dormant until now, was her ace. She typed a memo to herself. "Meet Victor Grant, 2 p.m. Confirm executive authority. Audit Logistics Division." Victor, her father's lawyer, would know how to wield her inheritance like a blade. She saved the file, her fingers steady, and closed the laptop with a soft click. The cafe's warmth felt distant, the world narrowing to her resolve. She wrote in her journal again, "They think they've won because I haven't screamed. They forget that silence is where I build my strength." The words anchored her, a reminder that this wasn't about rage. It was about reclamation. Maya gathered the folder, her voice low. "You're scarier when you're calm. You know that?" Olivia's eyes flickered with dark amusement. "Good. Let them underestimate me. It'll make the fall harder." Maya stood, promising to deliver more evidence by evening. Olivia watched her go, then turned her gaze to the cafe's window, where Manhattan's pulse thrummed beyond the glass. The city was a battlefield, and she was no stranger to its wars. Tara's smirk, James's betrayal, they were opponents, not conquerors. She stood, slinging her satchel over her shoulder, her blouse catching the light like a beacon. The barista called out, "Have a great day, ma'am." Olivia nodded, her lips curving faintly. The day wasn't great, but it was hers. She stepped into the street, the city's chaos enveloping her, her heels striking the pavement with purpose. Tara could play house, James could play silent, but Olivia was playing chess. Every receipt, every email, every signature was a move on her board. She whispered to herself, her voice a blade in the wind, "You took my walls, but you won't take my crown." The city roared on, but Olivia's silence was louder, a promise of the reckoning to come. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floors of Victor Grant's law office, a fortress of mahogany and glass perched high above Manhattan's restless heart. Olivia Carter sat across from Victor, her posture regal, her white blouse a stark contrast to the dark leather chair. Her long, ebony hair was swept into an elegant updo, each strand a silent testament to her composure. Her brown eyes, sharp with intent, met Victor's steady gaze as he slid a thick folder across the desk. The air was heavy with the weight of what lay within. documents that could tilt the axis of her world. Olivia's fingers, steady despite the fire in her chest, traced the folder's edge. Tara's smirk, James's silence, the violation of her penthouse. They were no longer just wounds. They were battle lines, and Olivia was ready to draw her sword. "Your father left you 60% of Carter Enterprises," Victor said, his voice low, measured, like a general briefing a commander. "Majority shareholder, executive authority. It's all yours." He leaned back, his silver hair catching the light, his eyes studying her with quiet respect. "James doesn't know. Or if he does, he's underestimated what it means." Olivia's lips twitched, a flicker of a smile that held no warmth. "He's underestimated me," she corrected, her voice smooth but edged with steel. She opened the folder, her gaze scanning the legal papers. Her father's will, shareholder agreements, corporate bylaws. Each page was a brick in the empire she'd inherited, a legacy James and Tara had dared to tarnish. She lifted a pen, its weight a promise in her hand. "Does he know his logistics division depends on my contracts?" she asked, her eyes never leaving the documents. Victor shook his head, a glint of amusement in his expression. "Not yet. His entire operation, shipping licenses, supplier deals, clearance permits, runs through Carter Enterprises. He's standing on your ground, Olivia." Her pen paused, hovering over a signature line. The revelation wasn't just power, it was leverage. A noose she could tighten when the moment was right. She signed her name in bold, deliberate strokes, sealing her authority. "I don't want revenge, Victor," she said, her voice calm, resolute. "I want clarity. They'll see exactly who they tried to erase." Victor nodded, sliding the folder back into his briefcase. "I'll file these today. You're the executive lead, effective immediately. What's your next move?" Olivia leaned back, her fingers interlaced, her mind a chessboard where every piece was hers to command. "An audit," she said. "James's division. Every transaction, every approval, every cent. I want it on my desk by week's end." Victor's brow lifted, but he didn't question her. "Done. Anything else?" Olivia's eyes darkened, a storm gathering. "Keep it quiet. They think I'm broken. Let them." She left the office, her low heels clicking against the marble corridor. Each step a drumbeat of purpose. The city sprawled below, its skyscrapers glinting like the edges of her resolve. Back at the Langham, Olivia sat at her suite's desk, her laptop open, her journal beside her. She typed an email to Carter Enterprises department heads, her words precise, commanding. "Initiate a full audit of the logistics division. Prioritize subcontractor deals and consultant fees. Report directly to me." She hit send, the soft click a gunshot in the silence. Her phone buzzed, Maya confirming more evidence. Emails showing James funneling contracts to Tara's shell company. Olivia's jaw tightened, but her hands remained steady. She wrote in her journal, "They dance in my house, but I'm rewriting the music." The evening settled over Manhattan, the city's glow filtering through her window. Olivia stood, crossing to the mirror. Her reflection was no longer the weary traveler who'd landed days ago. She was a queen reclaiming her throne, her blouse a banner, her hair a crown. She opened her laptop again, pulling up the company's org chart. James's name sat at the top of the logistics division, a title she'd once celebrated with him over champagne. Now it was a target. She traced his name with her finger, not with nostalgia, but with calculation. "You thought I'd fade," she whispered, her voice a blade in the quiet. "You forgot who built this." Her phone buzzed again. A text from Maya. "Found another transfer, $50K to Tara's account, labeled Creative Consulting." James signed off. Olivia's lips curved, a predator's smile. She replied, "Keep digging. I want everything." She set the phone down, her gaze drifting to the city beyond. Tara could play house, lounging on Olivia's sofa, sipping from her glasses. James could play silent, believing his absence would bury her. But Olivia was playing a different game, one of strategy, not sentiment. Every email, every receipt, every signature was a move toward checkmate. She returned to her journal, her pen moving like a sword. "They think my silence is surrender. It's a strategy. They'll learn the difference." The words anchored her, a map for the war ahead. She closed the journal, her fingers lingering on its cover, and stood crossing to the window. The skyline shimmered, a battlefield she knew well. Olivia Carter was no stranger to power. She'd faced doubters, outsmarted rivals, and carried her father's legacy through storms. This was no different. It was just personal. She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection merging with the city's glow. "You took my walls," she whispered, her voice soft but unyielding. "But you won't take my empire." The words were a vow, etched in the night. The city pulsed on, its secrets safe, but Olivia's were sharper, deadlier. She turned from the window, her shadow long and unbroken, her heart a furnace of calculated fire. The fight was coming, and she would meet it not with tears, but with the precision of a woman who held the board. The boardroom of Carter Enterprises shimmered with the cold gleam of glass and steel, its long mahogany table a stage for the reckoning about to unfold. Olivia Carter stood at the head, her tailored white power suit radiant against her dark skin, her long ebony hair flowing like a crown of defiance. Her brown eyes, sharp with unyielding resolve, surveyed the room. Executives in crisp suits, board members with furrowed brows, and at the far end, her husband, James, his face a mask of uneasy confidence. The air crackled with tension, each breath a prelude to the storm Olivia was about to unleash. Her leather-bound folder lay before her, its contents an arsenal of truth. Receipts, emails, bank transfers, each a nail in the coffin of James's betrayal. She adjusted her silver cufflinks, a deliberate gesture, and the room fell silent, waiting for her to speak. Olivia's voice, when it came, was silk over steel, smooth but cutting. "Good afternoon. As the majority shareholder of Carter Enterprises, I am assuming executive oversight, effective immediately." Gas rippled through the room, a wave of shock that broke against James's pale face. His blue eyes widened, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "Olivia, what is this?" he hissed, his voice low, trembling with a mix of disbelief and dread. She met his gaze unflinching, her expression a blade honed by days of silent fury. "Accountability, James," she said, her words clear, deliberate, echoing in the stunned silence. She clicked a remote, and the projector hummed to life, casting a spreadsheet across the screen. Unauthorized transfers, inflated consultant fees, contracts rerouted to Tara's shell company, all approved by James. "This isn't mismanagement," Olivia continued, her voice steady, each syllable a hammer strike. "It's theft." She gestured to Victor Grant, her lawyer, who stood beside her, his silver hair glinting under the lights. Victor distributed printed reports, each page a damning chronicle of James's complicity. Whispers erupted, board members flipping through the evidence, their murmurs a chorus of disbelief. Olivia's gaze swept the room, lingering on an older executive who'd once doubted her. "You didn't expect this," she said, her tone calm but piercing. "Is it because I'm a woman, or because you thought I'd mourn instead of lead?" The man looked away, his face flushed, and the room's silence deepened, a testament to her command. James stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Olivia, you can't do this," he said, his voice cracking, his hands clenched into fists. "This is my division." Olivia raised a hand, silencing him with a single gesture. "Your division?" she repeated, her eyes narrowing, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You stand on my ground, James. Carter Enterprises is my legacy, and you've defiled it." She opened her folder, pulling out a document marked Resolution 82B. "This terminates James Carter as CEO of the Logistics Division, effective immediately." The room froze, the words landing like a guillotine. James's mouth opened, but no sound came. His face drained of color, his world unraveling thread by thread. Olivia slid the document across the table, her signature gleaming in bold ink. "Your access to company systems is revoked," she said, her voice unwavering. "Security will escort you out." She paused, her gaze locking onto his, a flicker of pity in her eyes, not for his loss, but for his blindness. "You may keep the suit, James, but not the title." A murmur of laughter rippled from the back, sharp and fleeting, but enough to sting. James staggered back, his hands fumbling for the table's edge, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own betrayal. In the corner, Tara stood, her blonde hair catching the light, her green eyes wide with panic. Her emerald dress, once a symbol of her confidence, now seemed garish, out of place. She clutched her purse, her knuckles white, her smug smile a distant memory. Olivia's gaze flicked to her, brief but searing, and Tara flinched, the ground beneath her stilettos shifting. The board nodded, their silence a collective agreement that a new era had begun. Unbeknownst to the room, Victor had arranged a private live stream to key investors, the feed capturing every word, every gesture. Across Manhattan, screens flickered in offices and conference rooms, whispers spreading, "That's his wife." "No," another voice corrected. "That's his boss." Olivia clicked to the final slide, a projection of Carter Enterprises' future under her leadership. Transparent, resolute, unbreakable. "For years I watched this company rise," she said, her voice rising with quiet power. "But greed and betrayal have eroded it. I'm here not to grieve, but to rebuild." The room hung on her words, her presence a force that needed no applause. She closed her folder, the sound of gavels strike. "This is a reintroduction. I am Olivia Carter, and this is my company." James tried one last stand, stepping forward, his voice hoarse. "You blindsided me, Olivia." Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching. "No, James, I waited. You just never thought I'd arrive." The words cut deeper than any shout, their truth a mirror to his failure. Tara's phone buzzed in her purse, notifications piling up, clips of Olivia's speech circulating, comments flooding in. She played them both. A legend. She locked the screen, her hands trembling, her borrowed glory turning to ash. Olivia stepped back, her suit catching the light like a beacon. The boardroom, once a battleground, was now her throne room. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence was thunder enough. As the meeting adjourned, executives rose, their nods a silent pledge of loyalty. Olivia remained at the head, her shadow long, her heart a furnace of reclaimed power. The city beyond the glass walls roared on, but in this moment, Olivia Carter was its pulse. A queen who'd taken back her crown with a single, devastating stroke. The Manhattan dusk painted the sky in hues of bruised purple, casting a somber glow over the penthouse tower where James Carter's world had just shattered. Inside the sleek, glass-walled elevator, James stood rigid, his navy suit now a wrinkled shell, his sandy blonde hair disheveled from running his hands through it in disbelief. His blue eyes, once bright with charm, were dull, hollowed by the echo of Olivia's voice. "Your access is revoked. Security will escort you out." The boardroom scene replayed in his mind like a relentless nightmare. Her tailored white suit, her unyielding gaze, the document that stripped him of his title as CEO of Carter Enterprises' logistics division. His hands clenched into fists, the sting of her words. "You stand on my ground, James," cutting deeper than any blade. The elevator dinged, opening to the lobby, where two security guards waited, their faces impassive, their presence a final humiliation. James stepped out, his polished loafers scuffing the marble floor, each step heavier than the last. The guards flanked him, silent but firm, guiding him toward the glass doors. Employees glanced up from their desks, their whispers a soft hiss in the air. "That's him. She fired him." James's jaw tightened, his face burning with shame, but he kept his head high, clinging to the last threads of his pride. Outside, the city's pulse, honking taxis, flickering neon, was indifferent to his fall. He turned back once, catching his reflection in the building's facade. A man unmoored, a king dethroned by the woman he'd underestimated. His phone buzzed in his pocket, notifications flooding in. Clips of Olivia's speech, comments branding him a traitor, a fool. He silenced it, the weight of his ruin settling like dust. Across town, Tara paced the penthouse's living room, her emerald dress discarded for a black track suit, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun. The taupe walls, the teal cushions, the chandelier she'd chosen, they mocked her now, relics of a victory that had crumbled in hours. Her green eyes darted to her phone, its screen alight with messages. She played you both. Olivia's a legend. The live stream of the boardroom meeting had spread like wildfire. Each frame of Olivia's commanding presence, a nail in Tara's borrowed throne. She stopped pacing, her hands trembling as she dialed James. No answer. Her heart raced, panic clawing at her chest. She'd walked into Olivia's home with a smirk, claimed her space, her man, but now the ground beneath her felt like quicksand. James's car pulled into the penthouse's private garage. The engines hum a low growl in the silence. He slammed the door, his footsteps echoing as he climbed the stairs to the penthouse. Tara met him at the door, her voice sharp, desperate. "What happened, James? You said she wouldn't fight." He brushed past her, his face a mask of defeat, and sank onto the sofa. Olivia's sofa, now a bitter irony. "She didn't fight," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "She won." He ran a hand over his face, his eyes fixed on the floor. "She's the majority shareholder. She owns everything. Carter Enterprises, my division, this house. I'm nothing without her." Tara froze, her breath catching. "You mean the company?" she asked, her voice trembling. James's laugh was bitter, hollow. "No, Tara, everything. The deals, the contracts, this life. It was hers. I was just borrowing it." His words landed like a slap, stripping away the illusion she'd built. She stepped back, her hands clutching her arms, the chandelier's light casting harsh shadows across her face. "So I was what? A decoration?" she snapped, her voice rising. James stood abruptly, his eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and rage. "You were a choice, Tara. A mistake. Pack your things. You're gone by morning." Her mouth opened, shock rendering her speechless. "You're kicking me out?" she whispered, her voice breaking. James didn't answer, disappearing down the hall, his silence a final verdict. Tara stood alone, the penthouse's opulence now a cage. She walked to the mirror by the staircase, Olivia's mirror, one she'd mocked as outdated, and saw her reflection. Not a queen, but a pretender, her confidence unraveling thread by thread. She grabbed a suitcase from the closet, her movements frantic, stuffing clothes and jewelry with shaking hands. The life she'd flaunted, wine glasses, designer dresses, the penthouse's glow, was borrowed and the true owner had returned. Meanwhile, James sat in the darkened study, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. His phone lay on the desk, its screen flashing with emails from colleagues, investors, all distancing themselves from the man Olivia had exposed. He opened one from Victor Grant, a formal notice of his termination, signed by Olivia. The words blurred, his vision swimming, not with tears but with the weight of his blindness. He dismissed Olivia as too quiet, too absorbed in her work, her silence a canvas for his betrayal. He'd counted on her patience, mistaking it for weakness, never imagining she held the pen that wrote his fate. Tara's suitcase thudded against the floor as she dragged it to the door. She paused, looking back at the living room, its taupe walls now a monument to her hubris. "You thought you could erase her," she muttered to herself, her voice barely audible. She stepped into the elevator, her heels clicking faintly, and as the doors closed, she knew she wasn't just leaving the penthouse. She was leaving a dream that was never hers. James remained in the study, the whiskey glass cold in his hand. He whispered to the empty room, "I lost everything, didn't I?" The silence answered, heavy and unforgiving. Olivia, miles away at the Langham, stood by her suite's window, the city's skyline a tapestry of her triumph. She didn't know the details of James's fall, Tara's flight, but she felt their weight in the air, a shift in the balance of power. Her journal lay open, her latest entry a quiet vow. "They thought I'd break. I built instead." She pressed her palm against the glass, her reflection a queen unbroken, her empire hers once more. The city roared on, but Olivia's silence was louder, a prelude to the reclamation that would reshape her world. The midday sun bathed Manhattan in a golden haze, its rays glinting off the glass tower of Olivia Carter's penthouse as she stood before its private entrance. Her long, ebony hair cascaded over a tailored olive coat, her brown eyes steady, reflecting a quiet triumph. The key in her hand, newly cut, her locks restored, felt like a reclaimed scepter. Days had passed since the boardroom reckoning, since James's fall and Tara's frantic departure. But Olivia had waited, letting the dust of their ruins settle. Now she was ready. The doorman, Carl, tipped his hat, his smile warm but tinged with awe. "Welcome home, Ms. Carter," he said, his voice carrying the weight of her victory. Olivia nodded, her lips curving faintly, and stepped into the elevator, the soft hum a prelude to her return. The doors parted to the penthouse foyer, and Olivia paused, her breath catching. The air was still, heavy with the faint trace of Tara's cloying perfume, now mingling with the sterile scent of pine cleaner. She turned the key, the lock yielding with a satisfying click, and pushed the door open. The penthouse stretched before her, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's restless skyline. But it was not the home she'd left. The taupe walls Tara had chosen loomed like a stranger's signature. The teal cushions gone, the chandelier vanished, leaving a bare ceiling fixture in its place. The space felt hollow, stripped of the warmth Olivia had woven into it, her jasmine garden, her gray sofa, her curated memories. Yet beneath the violation, it was still hers, a canvas waiting for her touch. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood, each sound a reclamation. Her carry-on, a silent companion from her Nairobi trip, stood by the door, a reminder of the woman who'd returned to find her world upended. Olivia moved through the living room, her fingers grazing the marble counter where she and James had once shared late-night wine, laughing over dreams. The counter was bare now, no trace of their laughter, no note of apology. She didn't expect one. She hadn't come for remorse. She'd come for restoration. Her gaze fell on the staircase, where her antique silver mirror should have hung, its absence a wound. Tara had discarded it, deeming it outdated, but Olivia knew its value. Its cracked frame had witnessed her joys, her vows, her strength. She climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, her heart a steady drumbeat. The door creaked open, revealing a space both familiar and foreign. The wardrobe doors hung ajar, hangers scattered, drawers half empty, Tara's hasty exit etched in the chaos. Olivia's side remained untouched, a shrine to her presence. Her silk scarf folded neatly, her pearl earrings in their velvet box, a photo of her parents on the nightstand. She exhaled long and slow and sank onto the bed, her palm pressing against the mattress. "You survived," she whispered, her voice soft but resonant, a vow to the woman she'd become. The bed, once a sanctuary for her and James, now held only her, and that was enough. Downstairs, the buzzer sounded, and Olivia descended to meet the movers. They carried a large cloth-wrapped object, its edges protected by wooden boards. "Where, Miss Carter?" the lead mover asked, his tone respectful. She pointed to the staircase wall. "Back where it belongs." They unwrapped the antique mirror, its silver frame scratched but intact, its glass a clear reflection of her resilience. Olivia ran her fingers along the grain, her touch reverent. "Imperfections tell the truth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't replace it." The movers nodded, securing it in place, and as they left, the mirror caught the sunlight, casting a warm glow across the foyer. Olivia stood before it, her reflection a portrait of a queen reclaimed. She reached into her coat, pulling out a small envelope. Inside was a photo, her and James on their wedding day, once tucked into the mirror's corner. She studied it, her eyes tracing the joy that had long since faded. She didn't return it to the frame. Instead, she slipped it into a drawer, labeling it "past" in her mind. From her satchel, she retrieved a new photo, herself in the Carter Enterprises boardroom, radiant, commanding. She placed it in the mirror's corner, a declaration of who lived here now. "This is home," she said, her voice steady, the words a seal on her return. The afternoon waned, and Olivia moved through the penthouse, opening windows to let the city's breeze sweep away the last traces of Tara's perfume. She paused in the living room, imagining the walls repainted in soft cream, the gray sofa restored, the jasmine replanted. The space was empty but not vacant. It was alive with possibility, her possibility. Her phone buzzed, a text from Maya. "Investors are buzzing. You're the talk of Manhattan." Olivia smiled faintly, setting the phone down. She didn't need applause. She needed this moment, this quiet victory. As twilight settled, Olivia stepped onto the balcony, the city's skyline a glittering testament to her strength. She wore no coat now, just her blouse and slacks, her hair loose, catching the breeze. The air smelled of asphalt and promise, and for the first time in weeks, she breathed freely. The penthouse, stripped and scarred, was hers again, not because of locks or deeds, but because she'd chosen to return. She leaned against the railing, her eyes tracing the horizon. "You tried to erase me," she whispered to the ghosts of James and Tara, "but I'm the foundation." The city roared below, its rhythm a heartbeat she matched. Olivia Carter had come home, not to a house, but to herself. The mirror's reflection, the open windows, the empty rooms, they were hers, and she would fill them with a life no one could steal. She turned back inside, her shadow long, her heart a furnace of quiet power, ready to rebuild what was always hers. The Manhattan skyline shimmered under a twilight veil, its lights a constellation of ambition and resilience, as Olivia Carter stood at the heart of Carter Enterprises' Grand Gala. The company's headquarters, a sleek tower of glass and steel, pulsed with the energy of celebration. Crystal chandeliers casting prisms across marble floors, jazz notes weaving through the air, and the clink of champagne glasses a soft percussion to the evening's triumph. Olivia moved through the crowd, her emerald gown flowing like liquid starlight against her dark skin. Her long, ebony hair swept into an elegant updo that crowned her presence. Her brown eyes, once shadowed by betrayal, now gleamed with quiet power, each glance a testament to the empire she'd reclaimed. The gala wasn't just a corporate event, it was her coronation, a public declaration that Olivia Carter was no longer the wife who'd been erased, but the queen who'd rewritten her story. In the lobby, her antique silver mirror stood like a sentinel, its scratched frame a badge of survival, its glass reflecting the throng of guests, investors, executives, allies, who'd gathered to honor her. The photo tucked into its corner, Olivia commanding the boardroom, was a silent vow. This was her domain, her legacy. She paused before it, her fingers brushing the frame, a faint smile curving her lips. "You saw it all," she whispered, her voice lost in the music's hum, "and you never turned away." The mirror's reflection held not just her image, but her truth, a woman forged in fire, unbroken by the theft of her home, her husband, her trust. She straightened, her gown catching the light, and stepped into the main hall, where the crowd parted like a sea before her. The stage awaited, a sleek platform framed by velvet curtains, and Olivia ascended with the grace of a conductor before an orchestra. The microphone gleamed under the spotlight, her emerald gown a beacon as she faced the sea of faces. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear, resonant, carrying the weight of her journey. "Carter Enterprises isn't just a company, it's a legacy, my father's dream, my life's work. Tonight we celebrate not profit but purpose, transparency, integrity, strength. These are our pillars and I will protect them." The room erupted in applause, a thunderous wave that rolled over her, not as validation, but as recognition. She didn't smile, she didn't need to. Her presence was enough, a force that filled the hall with unyielding light. Guests raised their glasses, their cheers a chorus, but Olivia's gaze drifted to the mirror's reflection, visible through the hall's open doors. It anchored her, a reminder of the woman who'd stood in a hotel room, betrayed, yet chose to rise. She continued, her voice steady. "We've faced challenges, greed, disloyalty, but we've emerged stronger. This is our new chapter, and I write it with you." Her words were a vow, not just to the company, but to herself. James was a memory, Tara a footnote, their betrayal a storm she'd weathered to stand here, radiant, whole. The applause swelled again, and Olivia stepped down, her gown trailing like a comet's tail, her heart a furnace of quiet victory. She moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, her smile warm but measured. Maya, her assistant, approached, her eyes bright with pride. "You're trending, Olivia. Manhattan's calling you the queen of comeback." Olivia's laugh was soft, a rare melody. "I didn't come back, Maya. I never left. She glanced at the mirror again, its cracked corner a story of endurance. The gala continued, laughter and music filling the air, but Olivia slipped away to the balcony, the city's skyline stretching before her like a canvas of possibility. The breeze carried the scent of asphalt and starlight, and she leaned against the railing, a glass of champagne in her hand, its bubbles catching the light. Her phone buzzed, a message from Victor Grant. Contracts finalized. You're untouchable. She set it down, her eyes tracing the horizon. The city was hers, not because she'd won, but because she'd healed. She thought of the nights she'd waited for James's calls, the days she'd smiled through silence, the moment Tara's smirk had tried to erase her. Those wounds had scarred, but they'd also strengthened her, each one a brick in the foundation she now stood upon. She sipped her champagne, the taste crisp, and whispered to the night, "You thought you could repaint my life, but I held the brush." Back inside, the gala's energy surged, but Olivia lingered on the balcony, her gown shimmering under the stars. She opened her leather-bound journal, its pages a chronicle of her rise. Her pen moved with purpose. They stole my walls, my trust. I built a kingdom instead. This is not a new beginning. It's a continuation, the chapter I was always meant to write. She closed the journal, her fingers lingering on its cover, and looked out at the city. Ecclesiastes 3:1 echoed in her mind. To everything there is a season. Her season had come, not with noise, but with radiant, unyielding light. She returned to the hall, her presence drawing eyes like a magnet. A young executive approached, her voice hesitant. "Ms. Carter, how do you do it? Stay so strong?" Olivia's smile was gentle, her eyes deep with wisdom. "Strength isn't loud," she said. "It's the quiet choice to keep walking, even when the path burns." The woman nodded, inspired, and Olivia moved on, her gown a whisper against the marble. The mirror caught her reflection as she passed, its cracked corner untouched, a testament to her truth. She didn't need applause, she was the applause. A woman who'd risen not louder but higher, her light a beacon no betrayal could dim. Wow, what a journey with Olivia Carter, a queen who turned betrayal into triumph. What did you think of her story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did her strength inspire you, or did James and Tara's fall shock you? We love hearing from you. A huge thank you for joining us on this ride. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't miss our next tale of resilience and redemption. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell to stay in the loop. Share this video with friends who love a good comeback story, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay fierce, stay true, and we'll see you soon.